Hello, can we get everybody that wants to sit, please take a seat? Can everybody please take their seats?
Lots of energy. That's all right.
Can everybody in the room please take their seats? So so we're going to begin the next session. It is my honor to welcome Daniel Crittenbrink, who is the Senior Director for Asian Affairs in the National Security Council. That means he's the top Asia advisor to President Obama. Dan's previous incarnation was the DCM in Beijing. So Dan, please, we're delighted to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks. Really appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you, Murray, for that kind introduction. Thank you as well for the outstanding work that you and all your colleagues at CSIS do, including on maritime issues. It's a great pleasure to have an opportunity to address this conference and to share the administration's perspective on developments in the South China Sea. When I first accepted this invitation, of course, I did not know I'd be delivering remarks on such a consequential day, but I'm delighted to do so. This afternoon, I'll speak only briefly about today's ruling by the Law of the Sea Convention Arbitral Tribunal on the case brought by the Philippines against China. After that, I'll step back and I'll discuss our overall approach to the South China Sea. Then I will attempt to take a further step back to bring into focus how the South China Sea fits into our broader regional strategy. So, at the outset, let me say that we have an enduring interest in seeing territorial and maritime disputes in the Asia-Pacific, including in the South China Sea, resolve peacefully, without coercion, and in a manner that is consistent with international law. We strongly support the rule of law. We believe that all countries enjoy equal rights under the law, irrespective of their size or strength. We view the arbitral ruling today in that light. We support the diplomatic processes and peaceful dispute mechanisms such as arbitration that the arbitral tribunal provides. Such mechanisms are vital to the peaceful, lawful, and equitable resolution of differences among all nations. This morning, the Department of State spokesperson released a statement that represents the United States position on the arbitral ruling. That statement identifies the ruling as an important contribution to the shared goal of peaceful resolution to disputes in the South China Sea. That statement also notes that when joining the Law of the Sea Convention, parties agree to the convention's compulsory dispute settlement process to resolve disputes. In today's decision, and in its decision from October of last year, the tribunal unanimously found that the Philippines was acting within its rights under the convention in initiating this arbitration. As provided in the convention, the tribunal's decision is final and legally binding on both China and the Philippines. In today's statement, the United States expresses its hope and its expectation that both parties will comply with their obligations. In the aftermath of this important decision, we urge all claimants to avoid provocative statements or actions. Instead, the United States believes that claimants in the South China Sea can and should use the tribunal's decision as a new opportunity to renew efforts to address their maritime disputes peacefully. We encourage claimants to clarify their maritime claims in accordance with international law, as reflected in the Law of the Sea Convention, and to work together to creatively manage and resolve their disputes. Today's statement goes on to say that such steps could provide the basis for further discussions aimed at narrowing the geographic scope of their maritime disputes, setting standards for behavior in disputed areas, and ultimately resolving their underlying disputes free from coercion or the use or threat of force. So, we will need some time to study the precise implications of today's ruling. But as the State Department spokesperson noted in his statement, our primary focus is on supporting the process, that is, the peaceful use of all dispute resolution mechanisms. Rather than focusing primarily on today's ruling, however, I think it would be most useful for me to take a step back and discuss our general approach to the South China Sea. We view the South China Sea in the context of the global, rules-based order that we seek to uphold, both in the Asia-Pacific region and worldwide. Our strategy is guided by sustaining the principles at the heart of that rules-based international order, namely, customary international law, unimpeded lawful commerce, freedom of navigation and overflight for both civilian and military assets, and peaceful resolution of disputes. In our view, the vitality and consistent application of these principles has supported regional stability over the past 70 years. That has helped tamp down militarized rivalry and created conducive conditions for Asia's historic progress. That progress has lifted millions of people out of poverty and helped Asia emerge as an engine of global economic growth. We and the rest of the world have benefited greatly from these developments. These gains are not irreversible, however. Stability derives from order and predictability. Order and predictability stem from all countries operating based on a common set of rules. And when the rules only seem to apply to some countries, but not all of them, order breaks down. When order breaks down, national strength becomes the determinant of disputes. This incentivizes countries to become strong and act assertively. And we know from the histories of the past several centuries that such cycles often lead to tragic outcomes. That is why we are so focused on upholding key principles and ensuring that they apply equally to all countries, irrespective of their size or strength. We believe that doing so provides a baseline for all countries to resolve disputes peacefully, lawfully. In the South China Sea, there are, of course, a series of territorial and maritime disputes resulting from competing claims among Brunei, China, Malaysia, Philippines, Taiwan, Vietnam. As a matter of global policy, the United States does not take a position on competing territorial and maritime claims to which we are not a party. Nor do we opine on where neighboring countries decide to agree on their maritime boundaries. We also do not have any preferred outcome for the disputes. We leave that to the claimants to resolve. We are prepared to accept any outcome to disputes that claimants reach peacefully and that are in accordance with international law. What we are not prepared to accept, however, is the emergence of a different set of rules in the South China Sea relative to the rest of the world. We believe that such a development will lead to breakdowns in the rules-based international order. And over time, such a trend could unravel the international legal order and therefore the peace and stability that we and the rest of the international community have enjoyed over the past 70+ years. That is the logic underpinning why the United States takes such a strong position on upholding the rights, the freedoms, and the lawful uses of the sea and airspace guaranteed to all countries, and ensuring that these same rights and freedoms apply in the South China Sea the same as they do in every other part of the world. We see these efforts as linked to our broader national security interest in preserving and strengthening order globally. Now, I would be remiss if I did not also address how we think about maritime issues in the context of our relationship with China. As my comments just now have made clear, Our objectives are not animated by China. Rather, they are driven by our national interests in upholding order and the peace and stability that results from that order. We have no need or interest in stirring tension in the South China Sea to create a pretext for our involvement in the region, as some would like to suggest. We have been a Pacific power for decades, and the demand signal from the region for our continuing leadership is only growing stronger. We also do not fear China's rise, nor do we seek to use the South China Sea to thwart it. Rather, we welcome the emergence of a peaceful, stable, and prosperous China that plays a responsible role in world affairs. We benefit from a confident and a stable China that serves as an engine of economic growth and a contributor to addressing global challenges. The often overlooked truth is that in many ways, we now have a broader, more resilient, and more productive relationship with China than at any previous point. Our bilateral cooperation now spans the range of global challenges, from climate change and clean energy to pandemic disease, nuclear security, Iran, Afghanistan, and development cooperation, to name just a few areas. At the same time, the U.S.-China bilateral relationship is increasingly complex. Yet we have also established channels of communication with China that are more diverse, more direct, and more active than at any previous point. As a result, we are able to be exceptionally clear and candid in confronting our differences with China, including on the South China Sea. We have made clear that we have top national interests in the South China Sea, just as China does, just as many other countries in the region do, and that we will not turn a blind eye to this vital waterway in exchange for cooperation elsewhere. We also have had very direct conversations designed to better understand what China seeks to gain through expansive land reclamation and efforts to challenge civilian and military vessels and aircraft operating in international waters and airspace. Such efforts do nothing to bolster claims, to preserve stability, or to garner goodwill. Rather, they serve to inject tension into relations between China and its neighbors, as well as with us. So, to put it plainly, and stepping back from the U.S.-China relationship, we view it as in our interest to see disputes resolved peacefully and lawfully in the South China Sea and elsewhere. We do not think it wise or effective for us to decide precisely how the claimants should go about resolving their disputes, or for that matter, what land features should belong to whom. But we do believe that we can and do play a key role in helping to create conducive conditions for the disputes to be resolved, again, peacefully and in accordance with international law. And here's how we are going about doing just that. First, we are playing an active diplomatic role in encouraging all parties to coalesce around common efforts to lower tensions and around a common vision for the region's rules-based order. We see three potential sources of confrontation in the South China Sea: territorial disputes, disputes over hydrocarbons, and fisheries disputes. We are actively urging all parties to put in place safeguards against these potential sources of conflict. For example, we are urging claimants to clarify their maritime claims and peacefully manage and resolve disputes in a manner consistent with the international law of the sea, as reflected in the 1982 Convention on the Law of the Sea. We are encouraging use of the arbitral ruling to clarify and narrow what maritime areas of the South China Sea are in dispute. We are supporting the development of a process among claimants to establish procedures for resource exploitation in disputed areas. And we are promoting efforts to reach commonly accepted rules of behavior for regional coast guards when dealing with fisheries-related disputes. We are also encouraging all claimants to affirm their commitments, including under the 2002 ASEAN-China Declaration on Conduct, to peacefully resolve disputes and to refrain from establishing new outposts where none currently exist. These and other actions are intended to encourage progress by claimants in taking tangible steps to lower tensions and create political space for lasting solutions to be found. We think these diplomatic efforts have revealed a great deal of support among the international community for the principles at the heart of the rules-based order we seek to uphold. For example, in the Sunnylands Declaration issued by the United States and the 10 countries of ASEAN in February of this year, all of us reiterated our shared commitment to the peaceful resolution of disputes, including full respect for legal and diplomatic processes, to the rights of freedom of navigation and overflight and other lawful uses of the sea, to unimpeded lawful maritime commerce, and to non-militarization and self-restraint in the conduct of activities. Second, we are working closely with Southeast Asian coastal states to improve their maritime domain awareness and build their maritime capacity to patrol their own waters through a variety of programs, including the Department of Defense's Maritime Security Initiative. We're also working to support the development of a regional common operating picture. We believe these actions will lower the barrier to cooperation on shared challenges and reduce the risk of unintended incidents from escalating into crises. We are taking such steps in close coordination with other like-minded partners, such as Japan and Australia, who are similarly working to build capacity and domain awareness in the region. Some of the efforts the United States is investing in include helping the Philippines enhance its National Coast Watch Center, helping Vietnam develop future unmanned maritime capabilities, providing Indonesia and Malaysia with advanced communications equipment and training, and working with Thailand to improve information processing at fusion centers. From our vantage point, as countries become more capable of managing their own maritime spaces, the threshold for countries to initiate provocations against them will go up. And as a result, the risk of confrontations between claimants will decline. So in other words, we view these efforts as a high-impact investment in regional risk reduction. Third, we are regularly exercising our own military capacity in the South China Sea. To do this, we are pursuing 4 concurrent lines of effort. First, we are regularly demonstrating our military capacity and presence. Second, we're sustaining a steady tempo of military operations, including both routine presence operations and regular freedom of navigation operations as part of our long-standing global freedom of navigation program. Third, we are supporting efforts to foster the emergence of an integrated regional security network. And fourth, we are engaging China directly to reduce the risk of unintended incidents between our militaries. From a strategic standpoint, these efforts are designed to deter conflict and create space for diplomatic solutions. At the same time, these activities also preserve the fundamental principles at the core of the rules-based order, including by demonstrating that the United States military will continue to exercise and protect the right of all nations to fly, sail, and operate anywhere that international law allows. In addition to our own operations, we also protect these principles through inclusive multinational exercises, such as the Rim of the Pacific exercise in which 26 countries are participating right now. RIMPAC has brought together members of the international maritime community for the past 45 years to exercise the norms, standards, and rules that have supported stability in the Asia-Pacific. Now, I know that some of our military operations in the South China Sea have recently made headlines. So let me be clear. Our current operations in the Asia-Pacific and in the South China Sea build on 70 years of sustained and continuous presence and are consistent with policies that we apply on a global basis. Our military operations are not the key variable that has changed in the South China Sea over the past 5 years. Rather, they have been the constant, just as they have been for decades and will continue to be going forward. At the same time, it is also a fact that our forces in China are operating with closer proximity of each other and with increasing frequency. We recognize this raises the risks of incidents, and so does Beijing. That's why we both invested in developing confidence-building measures so that we both operate according to the same standards and expectations when our ships and aircraft encounter one another. Through shared effort, we have reduced the occurrence of unsafe and unprofessional encounters and established channels and mechanisms to manage incidents as they arise. We've done so in recognition of the fact that we both enjoy common rights, freedoms, and lawful uses of the sea and airspace, just as all countries do. The same holds true in the South China Sea as it does everywhere else in the world. So in sum, our holistic approach to the South China Sea is linked to our national interest in preserving and strengthening the rules-based order. Even as we remain clear-eyed about the challenges posed by actors seeking unilaterally to maximize their position relative to other claimants, we are committed to encouraging claimants to move in the direction of taking tangible steps to lower tensions, reduce the risk of rapid escalation, shrink the geographic scope of disputes, and over time, create conditions for peaceful solutions to emerge. It's not lost on us that many of the territorial and maritime disputes in the South China Sea have been around for a very long time. They are not going to be solved overnight. They're, of course, not going to be solved alone by us. But that does not diminish the significant stabilizing role that we play in the South China Sea or the region more broadly. Lastly, while the focus of my presentation here today is the South China Sea, I do want to make clear we have an Asia strategy that includes the South China Sea, and not vice versa. We view the region, with its economic dynamism, expanding trade and investment, growing ranks of capable powers, and increasing people-to-people ties with the United States, as presenting extraordinary opportunities. That's why the President decided early in his tenure to rebalance the focus of his administration toward the Asia-Pacific. Our vision for the region builds on the central role that we've played in sustaining security, enabling prosperity, and advancing human dignity in the Asia-Pacific since the end of World War II. Our vision is anchored in seeking to promote a stable and diversified security environment in which countries throughout the region pursue their national objectives peacefully, an open economic order that promotes strong, sustainable, balanced, and inclusive growth, and a liberal political order that promotes peace and human dignity. All of these objectives rest upon the foundation of maintaining a rules-based order, in which all countries abide by law and shared norms and principles. Now, to advance these objectives, we're moving concurrently on 4 central lines of effort. First, deepening and networking our relationships, particularly with allies, partners, and emerging powers. Second, promoting U.S. and regional prosperity, including through the Trans-Pacific Partnership, investments in regional connectivity, and efforts to support balanced economic growth that improves the well-being of all members of society. Third, strengthening shared rules, norms, and principles, and supporting regional institutions, including ASEAN, in order to support predictability of behavior and to lower the threshold for collective action to respond to challenges. And fourth, expanding cooperation with and among Asian countries in addressing critical global challenges such as climate change, humanitarian challenges, global health, and sustainable development. As has been the case for decades, our alliances in the Asia-Pacific will remain at the center of our strategy. Our security commitments to them are ironclad. We will ensure that we maintain the capabilities to fulfill those commitments. Our efforts are not directed at any country, but rather are aimed at transforming our alliances from the security-oriented defensive platforms of the 20th century into 21st century platforms for rapidly and effectively addressing challenges, whether they be related to humanitarian assistance and disaster response, countering proliferation, stopping human trafficking, or supporting reconstruction in war-torn areas, to cite just a few examples. So I mention this to emphasize that even as we address the pressing challenges of the day, this administration also is focused on the long game and on America's long-term national interest in the Asia-Pacific, which will endure for generations to come. We continue to nurture the development of a common vision for the future of the region. That common vision is inclusive, and it enjoys broad support because it reflects the aspirations of the region. So, in conclusion, we will continue working vigorously to address the near-term challenges in the South China Sea, even as we remain focused on the broader trend lines in the Asia-Pacific, which we believe favor the positive vision the United States holds for the region's future. Thank you very much, and thank you for the honor of allowing me to address you today. Thank you.
So, Dan, thank you very much for that very helpful overview of U.S. policy toward Asia and the South China Sea. And it's been a real pleasure to host you here.
The honor's all mine.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Mark.